So I want to put some focus back on why Britney Spears was an important pop star, like why we all care and love about, her, why she meant something to us as fans of hers, as fans of pop music, and some of the kind of experimental and sort of, generational things that she did. So I want to refocus on that a bit with you guys. So I guess my first question, and maybe Jason, I'll start with you on this one. Why is Britney Spears an important pop star? Divorced from the public
Small
narrative.
Question.
Divorced.
Small.
No, but I mean
Thanks
this.
for starting
I mean
with
this. If you could just think of, you don't have to answer the whole question, but if there's specific things that you could think about, whether it's performance, voice, style, choreography, artistry, what would be different about pop music if Britney had not done it?
Look, I think when you're talking about Britney Spears, it's important to look at the moment in which she arrived on the pop scene, because it's in the 1990s,
yes.
Right? You have a lot of different things going on, everything from Nirvana to hip-hop, but I think hip-hop in particular is really important here, because this is the decade of gangsta rap, and East Coast, West Coast beefs, and literal violence being enacted in pop music. And also you have the rise of, sound scan data, and suddenly people know what everyone's listening to, and white kids in the suburbs are listening to hip hop music. And that causes a certain kind of fear publicly. And into that, you have formatted boy bands, right? The rise of these boy bands, white boy bands, because you had Boyz II Men and others earlier, but you have these white boy bands, and then you have the rise of girl pop, which was Britney and everyone else you want to mention in that. And so I think in a lot of ways, she really becomes important in that moment, right? Because she is somebody who extends the sort of triple threat legacy of the Michael Jacksons of the decade earlier, of Madonna, figures like that. Even somebody like a Samantha Fox, who doesn't get mentioned a lot. I think in some ways Britney kind of updates that legacy. And she does that for the 90s at this particular moment, right, in which there are all these cultural fears, conservative cultural fears around the blackening of pop music. She enters into the sphere at that moment, and I think she updates that legacy of Michael Jackson and others, but ties it into the rise of this sort of teen pop that is ultimately, for me, a kind of conservative force in some ways, because it's meant to sort of quell the concerns around gangster rap. So that's where she comes out of. But the important thing, I think, is that the music is great.
Yes.
The songs are amazing. The production is amazing.
Yes.
She's an unusual figure in the sense that she comes out of this Mickey Mouse Club, background, and she has this, she does have skill, right?
Yes.
Real skill. But her listening is different, right? The fact that she's listened to black singers, and in the book, the first thing she talks about is gospel music. That's the first thing that she heard, and she considers music to be this spiritual thing, right? That it's like her direct connection with God. And so you hear that in her music in the sense that she's a really powerful performer who's able to deliver this in a way that's different from, I think, a lot of her peers who also came from that same moment. It was a factory-produced moment, but she doesn't seem that factory-produced in some ways.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jason, talk to me all day and all night, please. Mine is not going to be that deep. I'm so sorry. I was a girl from Texas, and she was from Louisiana. I was in 6th grade, and I go, oh my God, I want to be this woman. And I feel like everybody else, it didn't matter who they were, what they looked like, wanted to be Britney Spears. I'm literally wearing a cosplay of her right now, drive me crazy with the Skechers. Thank you. I tried. Every day is dressing up like Britney Spears. But she, a lot of what I cover is the intersection of beauty and entertainment. And she has been the through line for almost every single pop star since she came onto the scene. Billie Eilish has named her as an influence. Lindsay Lohan, when she did Rumors, said that music video was directly influenced by Britney, I'm a Slave for You. Selena Gomez, obviously that's a little bit more obvious because she was a Disney kid and so was Miley, but they both said for We Can't Stop and Come and Get It, those songs and music videos were directly influenced by Britney. And so I think if you are seeing current pop stars still be influenced by the way that she did these things in the early aughts of her career, that's why she's important. That's her influence. Like she continues to keep, I mean, we're probably going to see people in 5 to 10 years still be influenced by seeing her VMAs performances or her outfits that she liked to wear that the paparazzi took photos of. I mean, like, dump him shirts are rampant around LA. Have you guys seen them on the streets? So just from that perspective, I think that she's incredibly important as an image maker.
Image maker is definitely a big one.
Those are both really good answers. Yeah. Okay. I always say that I think it's really interesting when you look at Britney's timeline. Like her signing her name on that Jive Records contract, like kind of set the tone for the next like 20 years. Cause it's like, you know, had Christina done it first or had Jessica done it first, who knows how the whole thing would have like Yahtzeed out.
It was, no.
But like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, she really set the tone for everybody. Like, everybody had to reassess what they were doing. All the girls had to re-record their music. Everybody had to be repackaged and rebranded and dyed their hair. And like, you know, it was like this whole thing. Like, she really was like a meteor that hit the earth. And I feel like when people look back at like Y2K style and like early 2000s style, like what they don't realize is that a lot of it is just Britney cosplay. And that a lot of the girls at that time were dressing like Britney. And I think for younger people, it's hard for them to even wrap their heads around somebody like a Beyonce being inspired by Britney and like opening up for her, like Destiny's Child opened up for her. Like, I think it's hard for people to really understand like the magnetism because it was so all encompassing that it's hard to even like put it into words, really.
Yeah, I think those are all important, and they've all made me think of 3 things that I want to say. One is, I think that teen pop moment was such a well-defined like moment in which like pure pop, like pop in its sort of like essence form became so centralized. Like, it's happened at other times, but it was a moment where, as Jason was kind of laying out, like it sort of centralized. And there was this whole ecosystem around it created by MTV, created by TRL, created by the VMAs. And she was so much the poster. And that, let me just say this, that moment defined our childhoods. I mean, it was just the thing. And it was monoculture in its sort of finest form that we don't know about anymore. I mean, we don't have this anymore. So it was just, that whole ecosystem was so definitional to how we all process and think about popular culture. And she was the poster child for that movement. So I think in that way, you can never rip away her importance, even beyond just the great music and all the other parts of it. Like, she, as the emblem of that moment, she defined a generation's idea of what a pop star is supposed to be. And I think that in some ways, we still look at her weirdly as the platonic ideal of a pop star. And what I mean by that is, like, there's other pop stars that are more kind of like idiosyncratic. There are other pop stars that, you know, I don't know, do all kinds of other things, but I think there's a certain way in which she's the one, when you think pop star in a certain sense, it's like if you were going to make one like in a laboratory, and I don't mean to take away agency from her by saying that, I think she's the one that somehow is crystallized in our minds in that way as pop star. I mean, when The Weeknd made this horrible show that he made, who's the pop star, about a pop star? Who's the pop star that he's trying to make? He's trying to make Britney, and that's 25 years of, you know, since she emerged. And the last thing I want to say is The Voice. I mean, The Voice. I think the way that she kind of owned and leaned into that sort of growling, purrish, nasally thing, I think forever changed the way that we accept pop stars' voices. I mean, it's not that other people with, you know, strange or you know, not particularly forceful voices haven't come into the fore before. We have Janet, we have plenty of people. But I think there's something about that voice that is so indelible and so important and so emulated throughout time that I feel like that's very important as well.
I was just going to, only thing I'll push back on is the monoculture idea. Because I do think that there were multiple stories going on in the 90s.
Right.
And in the early 2000s. And I think for a lot of people, the way that you talk about Britney, they talk about Brandy.
Sure.
As this figure who is the voice.
Yes.
Right? This figure who also kind of, you know, developed this or cultivated this idea of a teen pop before Britney came on the scene. Right. And, you know, it was a very segregated music industry at the time, and it wasn't even possible for a lot of black women to go pop in the way that Britney did. Totally. And that's why I wanted to mention her whiteness, because I think that's the part of her appeal.
No question.
Right?
No question. I mean, we should mention that Baby One More Time was originally conceived as a TLC song. So it's a way in which she kind of pilfered something that was, and Max Martin famously, obviously, has been kind of memorialized in John Seabrook's book, The Song Machine, was essentially trying to make music for Toni Braxton and, thought he, but ended up not being exactly adept at making actual R&B music, but made a sort of white version of it, essentially.
And the book has those weird moments, right, where she's talking about Justin Timberlake.
Yes.
And just like observing him as. Can we use the word wigger anymore? I don't know, but that's like literally
you can.
That's what's happening, and it's so casual the way she refers to it all, and you just think, oh well, that was the era.
She read him.
But isn't it amazing that she totally was like, oh yeah, and he was really trying. Who was he saying that to again?
Genuine, yeah.
Oh my God, it's like even worse every time you think about it.